So when we look at the author corner of the rhetorical triangle, we ask ourselves, who created the text? What do we know about that person? And how does that knowledge affect our interpretation of the text and the rhetoric in the text? And ultimately, the effectiveness of that rhetoric. So here we've got two examples of two very different authors who both affect their respective texts. Um, on the right-hand side, we've got Hitchcock of Birds and Psycho fame and all of his many famous movies. And on the left-hand side, we've got Snooki of Jersey Shore fame. Two very different authors with two very different reputations. But as you can see, just kind of by your immediate reaction to those names and these two people, um, their reputations precede them, and their reputations affect any text that they will create. Um, you may have certain previous knowledge or assumptions about Snooki, and that may affect not only how you read her book, but uh, affect your judgment before you even sit down to read it. And that's based all on reputation. And Hitchcock is the same way. He's one of the great film directors, and so his reputation affects every movie that he's ever made, or more specifically, the viewing of every movie he's ever made. So in the act of reading, in the act of interpreting, you can't help but be affected by the author and their previous works and their reputation when interpreting any given text. This is especially true if you're reading something of a highly divisive or possibly political nature. Uh, like, let's say you're reading a text on gun control. That's something that's been in the news a lot lately. Well, if the author of this essay on gun control, who's arguing for gun control, uh, has a history of being very adamantly and in an extremist sort of way for gun control, uh, then knowing that author's reputation, maybe having read some of their other works, that will affect how you look at the text that's in front of you. And that can kind of color your interpretation of a text in a negative way, but it's also a very useful tool. Again, one of the rhetorical tools. It's a very useful way to learn more about the text, to interpret the text and its rhetoric in a more holistic way, with more context. So that's one of the corners of the rhetorical triangle. The next corner is audience. An audience is almost the reverse of author. Um, an audience, every text is written, first of all, every text must be created by somebody in order to exist in the first place. But since a text, by our definition, is an act of communication, something created for the purposes of communication, then every text not only has to have someone who creates it, but must also have someone, at least one person, to read it or to listen to it or whatever it is in order to exist. Because otherwise, it's like that old saying, if a tree falls in the woods and no one's around to hear it, then does it make a sound? Well, the same is true of audience. If there's no audience for a text, does that text truly exist in the first place? Because a text is an act of communication, and an act of communication must have a sender and a receiver. So, just like author, we ask several different questions about our audience. Who was the text written for? What do we know about them? Is it a small group of people? Is it a very large group of people? What do we know about that group? And most importantly,